This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show, and our Moonlighter for today is one of the most decorated high school athletes we have ever had here on the podcast. Heck, he's one of the most decorated high school athletes in the state of Iowa's history. His name is Jake Hilmer. That's right, Jake Hilmer is the all-time national, not just the state of Iowa, but national record holder for most hits recorded in a high school baseball career. He's also the Iowa state record holder for most hits, of course, and also runs scored. But it wasn't just the baseball diamond where Jake Hilmer made a name for himself while playing at North Linn High School. He also was co-Mr. Basketball for the state of Iowa in 2019, leading North Linn to a state championship. He's the all-time state record holder for most steals and most assists. He is now playing two sports at Upper Iowa University. It's a Division II school in Fayette, Iowa. He is playing two sports at Upper Iowa right now, both in basketball and baseball. Last year was his freshman year at Upper Iowa, and he didn't miss a beat going from high school to college. He was the starting point guard at Upper Iowa under Brooks McCowan. And as you remember, Brooks McCowan was a great point guard at the University of Northern Iowa. Brooks McCowan is also the state record holder for most high school points scored in the state of Iowa. And Jake had a great freshman year playing for Brooks McCowan. As soon as basketball got over with, Jake joined the Upper Iowa Peacocks on the baseball diamond almost the very next day after basketball season was over with. But unfortunately, that season got cut short due to coronavirus. And so now Jake is starting up his sophomore year at Upper Iowa. And normally, we don't have a lot of college-age kids here on the podcast. Most of our podcast episodes are about guys whose careers are in the rearview mirror, or at least mostly in the rearview mirror. But I wanted to get Jake Hilmer on the pod because I love two-sport athletes, and I think that's a story that we love to talk about here on the podcast. And I was thinking back of who Jake Hilmer reminded me most of, and I thought of a guy by the name of Joel Osborne. I don't know if you guys remember the name Joel Osborne, but he played for those Harlan high school teams in southwest Iowa in the early 2000s when Harlan won 4 consecutive state championships in football, basketball, baseball, and track. Now, Joel didn't run track, but he was the captain of the football team, the basketball team, and the baseball team. And then Joel Osborne went on to star in 2 sports at Northwest Missouri State, both in basketball and football. And with as accomplished as Joel Osborne was in high school, he was kind of a really big deal. And I hadn't seen somebody kind of have that same type of high school cachet since Joel Osborne until Jake Hilmer came around. So I've been following Jake Hilmer's career while he was in high school and now at Upper Iowa. And I love to see a kid, especially in the era of sports specialization, go after 2 sports and try to play 2 sports at an elite level. Jake probably could have played Division I basketball or Division I baseball if he would have focused his time on just one sport or even his recruiting process on just one sport. But he wants to play 2 sports in college. He's really good. He's a really talented athlete, and he's doing a really good job of it right now. And, even this summer, Jake didn't have much of a freshman baseball season at Upper Iowa due to the virus, but he did latch on with the Waterloo Bucks in the Northwoods League this summer, and he had a great maybe last month of the season with Waterloo there. And I think Waterloo Bucks actually won a championship in the Northwoods League this year. And you guys know how I feel about the Waterloo Bucks. I, of course, am the single season record holder for the most losses in Waterloo Bucks history. It's probably a record that'll never be broken. So I got to support guys that are in the bullpen on the pitching staff of the Waterloo Bucks. And it was great to catch up with Jake. See, you guys will probably notice in this interview with Jake that the audio quality is not the best that we've ever had. And the reason is that we had a massive windstorm here in the state of Iowa just a couple of weeks back. And Jake and I had scheduled to do this interview the day after that windstorm happened. And so at that time, the internet service and cell phone service in the state of Iowa weren't that great. But we wanted to make sure we got this interview in because Jake is a busy busy man. He's playing 2 sports. There's not much time for him to do interviews. So he stuck with the interviews, even though the cell phone service and the wireless service at that time after the windstorm weren't very good. And you'll probably notice a little bit, but it's still a really great interview with Jake Hilmer. He's a fascinating kid. He's sharp. He's confident. And it's really fun to talk to kids that their career is still all out in front of him. And so Jake Hilmer, if you like watching, great underdog stories, great 2-sport athletes, start following Jake Hilmer at Upper Iowa University. This kid has an extremely bright future, both in athletics and in life. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy this episode of the Moonlight Graham Show. And if you like what we're doing here on the podcast, we would love it if you subscribe to our podcast and left us a 5-star review. You can also follow the show on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We love hearing from you guys each and every week. So enjoy today's episode with Moonlighter Jake Hilmer. But before we get to our episode, I want to talk to you about a new partner of ours. It's called the Underdog Newsletter. So the Underdog Newsletter is an email newsletter that you can sign up for online. Here's what it is. It's a bite-sized rundown of the best underdog stories in sports. You guys know we're all about the underdogs here on the Moonlight Graham Show. And what these guys do, they sift through thousands of stories each and every week and handpick the best underdog stories and deliver them into your email inbox each and every week. They deliver it the same time the Moonlight Graham Show comes out every Tuesday morning. And these guys over at the Underdog Newsletter, they celebrate the long shots, the rejects, the misfits, beating the odds, and overcoming adversity. I don't know if there's a better email subscription list that you can sign up for than the Underdog Newsletter. Here's how you find them. You head over to www.jokermag.com/newsletter, or to make it even easier, all you have to do is type in Underdog Newsletter into Google, sign up for the Underdog Newsletter. It'll come into your inbox every Tuesday morning, and let them know the Moonlight Graham Show sent you. I guarantee that you'll enjoy this Underdog Newsletter each and every week. Check them out, guys. All right. Well, Jake, first of all, congratulations on the Northwoods League debut last night.
Yeah. I finally got up on the bump, and it went pretty well. So I think I'm tied right now for all-time best ERA. So we'll see if we can keep that going for a few more weeks here or so. But no, it's good to finally get back on the bump. It's always exciting.
So I saw last night that Dayton Moore, the GM of the Royals, was actually in the stands at Riverfront Stadium in Waterloo last night. Did you have any idea he was there?
Well, I knew his son was on the other team, and I got him to line out, so I'm hoping to get a phone call here pretty shortly.
Okay.
So if I hang up, that'd be why. But no, I didn't realize he was in the building, but that's pretty cool. Was he the GM when they won the World Series a couple years back?
Yeah, he's been with them for a while now, and he's pretty highly regarded in GM circles. So it's pretty cool that you've at least pitched in front of him. So you've had at least a little bit of chance.
Well, I'm glad you told me that. I would have never even realized. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so what's it mean, like, to you? You didn't get much of a college baseball season last year. What's it mean to you to be playing in the Northwoods League right now?
Yeah, obviously it was pretty disappointing when the season got cut because personally I was off to a decent start, and I was just trying to get comfortable with everything and kind of get a feel for how the next few years will go, trying to do both sports. So it was obviously disappointing when the season got cut, but to get an opportunity, a late call-up in the Northwoods League, it's one that you really can't pass up. There's name after name of notable players and guys that play in the Northwoods League that have made it to the bigs and stuff. It's a pretty surreal feeling. Kind of just take a step back and realize how pretty fortunate you are to get opportunities like this as an athlete.
Do they still have the beer batter every night in the Northwoods?
Yeah, there's always the beer batter, and there's always the guys that they're picking on that have more strikeouts on the season, and you'll see guys who strike out, like go to Rochester and strike out, and the next time they're in Rochester, they're the beer batter then, and that's something that's pretty cool, pretty funny.
Oh yeah, it's one of my all-time favorite things about the Northwoods League, and it's it's like college athlete exploitation at its absolute finest, and then you add the beer batter in, and it just makes it even better. And there's nothing better than when the beer batter in a place like Rochester or Madison or La Crosse or Eau Claire on like a Friday night, some of these great Northwoods League parks, and then the beer batter strikes out in like the middle of the 5th inning and the place just goes crazy. It's one of the best things ever.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you got a few guys who have already probably had a few too many, and they're cheering a little extra harder, and they're a little bit more engaged in the game than they probably would be in the 6th or 7th inning of a North League game. But yeah, it's been an interesting. I've only been with them for a week, but you see some funny characters in the crowd.
That's cool, man. So coming out of high school, you set so many records in high school coming out of North Linn, like both on the basketball court and on the baseball diamond. And I had to imagine you were getting recruited both for basketball and baseball coming out of high school. What was that recruiting process like for you your senior year of high school?
I never really said, I want to be a basketball player or I want to be a baseball player. I never really made that clear, but I think a lot of people got the feeling and the vibe around the college recruiting circle that I was going to be a basketball player. And that was probably just because I was doing all the AAU basketball stuff, and it kind of appeared from the outside that I was putting all my chips into basketball, where I wasn't really doing a lot of perfect game baseball stuff. I wasn't really doing the exposure camps on the baseball side of it. But, the reason for that was just simply because, there's only so much time in the year. I can't be everywhere at once, and so that's just kind of the way it ended up working out. So as I'm fielding calls from college basketball coaches, I'm going to be honest, the baseball lines weren't really as hot. And personally, I think baseball might be my best sport. So I think the biggest reason for that was just because most people just had the feeling I just wanted to play basketball. But obviously, eventually, Upper Iowa comes to me with an opportunity where I can do both, and especially at the Division II level. And ultimately, that was probably what I thought was best for me. And so far, it's really been a decision that's definitely not been a regrettable one.
Yeah, so you were coached by your dad and by your grandpa a lot growing up. What type of advice did they have for you while you were getting recruited out of high school there?
Yeah, my grandpa had coached some Division I guys at Ford City when he was younger, and obviously the recruiting process had changed a lot since then. And my dad hadn't had a lot of college basketball players or anything. I think they did a really good job just kind of sitting back and letting it be my experience. Obviously, they're along to give me advice and help. They didn't really butt their heads into it. It was something that I didn't even talk to them a ton about it. I kind of field calls and texts and stuff, and I kind of kept it to myself. I wanted it to be my own decision. I didn't want others to really influence it too much. I really wanted it to be something that I was mature enough and smart enough to really break everything down and make a decision for myself. So they didn't really get involved as much as you might think. But obviously, they're a lot older and wiser than me. They're there for advice if I needed it and stuff like that.
Did any part of you think if you go on and play 2 sports in college at a Division II level, are you kind of hamstringing yourself so that you don't reach your potential in either one of the sports? Because you're not devoting a total amount of time to whether it's basketball or baseball, you may not hit your potential ceiling?
And I'm glad you did ask it because I think it kind of, that even is in high school, for me. There's always that, what if I went all in on one sport? What if all the time I'm at the baseball field, I was in the gym? What if all the time I was in the gym, I was on the baseball field? What would my talent level, what would it be then? And it's something that I try, I don't really think about it because I've had so many experiences in basketball and in baseball that have been I can't imagine not having them. And even now going to college, there's already been experiences on both sides of it that I'm just like, if I didn't have these moments, I would regret it then, So I think if I was doing just one, I'd regret that I didn't try to do both or something like that. I think it works both ways. And it's something that I evaluate year by year. And right now, I want to do both, and I can do both. And I think that, especially at the Division II level, with the time that there is for limited to with coaches and stuff, it leaves it all on my own. So I can judge my own body and decide, what is doing too much. And you know what? It's so far, I think it's been, I think it's worked out just fine. So right now, at this point in my life and career, I don't have those thoughts. I think maybe that's something that could come up, 10, 15 years down the road, just when I'm reminiscing and stuff. I'm like, man, what if I did did it different. But I mean, every athlete's going to do that with all kinds of different stuff.
You talk about balancing your time, and that's one thing that I learned in college. I started out at a junior college, and at junior college, there's not as many rules as far as how much time you can have in the weight room or how much time coaches can be around the teams. And then when I went and played at UNI after that, I was surprised at how little time that we had at practice as compared to a JUCO. So I definitely agree with you. At like the Division II level, there's only so much time you can have at practice, which leaves plenty of time if you're not working a job to do things outside of that. So I definitely get that point. And it seemed like on the basketball court, you stepped in right away for the Peacocks at Upper Iowa last year and had a really good year as a freshman. And it didn't seem like you had that big of a learning curve. What did you have to improve about your game or notice about your game to translate to the college level as a true freshman last year?
Yeah, I think people were expecting it to be a little bit harder of an adjustment coming from a small high school. But the thing that people have to realize is I was playing AAU basketball with Barnstormers at the highest level possible. We're playing some of the best teams, some of the best recruits in the country. So I had seen good athletes. I had seen guys who can play the game at a high level. And for me, so coming in, but there was a learning curve. I mean, my first 8 or 9 games, look at those stats compared to my last 8 or 9, and it'll shock you. I mean, I did come off to a little slow start, but I would just credit the coaches for really keeping trust in me. They could easily, after 5-6 games when I was struggling, say, you know what, maybe you should come off the bench. But I think they knew that I was going to adjust eventually, and it was going to be a good thing for the program and a good thing for me. So once I got the hang of it, once I got the feel for it, but again, when you play as much basketball as I do, it's all the same, no matter what level. Basketball is basketball. So I'm looking forward to continuing to improve.
Yeah, and you've got like the all-time steals and assists record for Iowa high school, and your coach, Brooks McCowan, has the all-time points record out of high school. And Brooks was a year older than me in high school, and I played against Brooks back in the day. What have you learned from Brooks McCowan?
Yeah, Brooks is obviously a former Mr. Basketball, was a very good player, played at UNI. He was a scoring-oriented player, and for me, I'm like a pass-first player, so we're not the same in that regard. But something that we definitely share is how competitive we are. We both are win at all costs kind of guys, and to play for a coach that's so similar to you in that regard is super, super special. Brooks, he's one of the coaches. He's a real coach, so like he's super honest with his players. He'll just, when we're in the gym, we're playing basketball a lot. We're not doing drills that don't really correlate to the game. It's a lot of control scrimmaging and stuff like that, and I think that's the way to improve as a team because you're playing 5-on-5. You're learning each other, and he does a great job of making sure we get plenty of that in practice.
You mentioned you're a pass-first point guard, but what type of pitcher are you?
Change was my best pitch. So growing up, even as an 8th grader, I didn't have a curveball yet. So my changeup had to be really good and really effective, or guys would really mash off me. And to this day, I would still say the changeup is my best pitch. I throw the ball, mid to upper 80s. When I'm feeling really good, I'm upper 80s, so fastball can be definitely effective. I throw a curveball. I throw it more for strikes. It's not a strikeout pitch for me. But yeah, I'm a guy who throws a lot of changeup, likes to get ground out, guys out on the front foot, just lazy balls and stuff like that. That's kind of my pitching style. Yeah, so
often we hear in sports, like, the toughest thing to do in sports is hit a baseball, right? That's kind of like this cliche that's been out there for, 100 years or so. I always thought, hitting, it's one of these things where if you do it as a kid and you develop the hand-eye coordination, you can put the bat on the ball. And, even now I'm in my mid-30s, I could probably get in a batting cage or step in a game and, make contact. I may not be able to drive the ball anymore, but I can make contact. But at the same time, like, it's hard for me to go out and run an 800 right now, and it's hard for me to go out and, like, play a game of 5-on-5 basketball against guys that are really good and playing at the pace and tempo of like a college point guard, I think, in my opinion, is harder than hitting a baseball. But, I didn't try to play 2 sports in college either. So what do you think is the hardest thing in sports?
I think hitting a baseball is the hardest thing in sports. I really do. I know it's a cliche, but, if you follow some Twitter accounts, I follow his Pitching Ninja, and if you watch the videos and the overlays of some of those pitches, it's hard for me to say that that's not the hardest thing to do. I think the reason that it separates from other things is when somebody throws a baseball, it's not always the same. It's always it can be completely different 5 straight pitches. And that's kind of what separates it from all the other things in sports that are hard. I mean, there's lots of other things in sports that are hard, don't get me wrong, but from my experiences, I think hitting a baseball is, in fact, the hardest thing to do in sports.
Well, you say that, and then at the same time last year, your first game that you stepped to the plate in college, you hit a home run.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not for me specifically, but for the average guy, maybe that's the hardest thing. Maybe for me, the hardest thing is throwing a spiral in football, because if I go out in the backyard, it's a lot of duck snorts and stuff like that, no matter how hard I try. So maybe it's person by person. I think the universal answer, though, you put 100 people at the plate and doing all that, most people would answer that hitting the baseball was the hardest.
All right. When's the last time you and your brother Austin have fought?
Oh, wow. I mean, so we share a room, so we're around each other a lot, especially now this summer and during this pandemic. I can't remember our last fight. We've been doing well. We're on a good little streak here. For the most part, we have a really, really good relationship where we don't argue and stuff as much. I do remember the last time we got in a little fight. We were at open gym. We were playing pickup basketball, and he's up top. He checks the ball to me, and I check it back. And he just kept checking the ball back to me. I don't know what he was doing. And I was like, let's go. Let's play. And I threw it, and it hit him in the nose. He's like, are you serious? And that was a little quick altercation, nothing too crazy. But for the most part, we do get along pretty well.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like a little brother to get under your skin. Nobody knows how to push your buttons quite like a brother.
Oh, no. And Austin Hilmer, of all people, he's the most, he'll butt heads with you no matter what. He's always right. I love the kid, but he never surrenders in a fight. It's never like, you know what, you're actually right in this case. He's going to fight it till the end. So him especially, more than even most brothers, will eventually have times where you're butting heads for a good couple hours.
Has he ever got the best of you, like beat you in one-on-one or struck you out or anything like that?
I'm trying to think. I mean, we do play a fair share of one-on-one, so he'll get wins here and there. But, I mean, consistently, he's not going to beat me in one-on-one. He's still growing, but I will say the gap has closed a lot the last year, I would say.
Yeah, I grew up in a house full of brothers as well, and so I know what it's like to be a younger brother, and I also know what it's like to be an older brother, and to be like, you got to hold your ground. You got to be like, I can't let the younger brother ever get the upper hand, or else I may never get it back.
Right. Yeah. Oh, exactly. Once the torch is passed, it doesn't come back as the older brother. So I got to keep this thing at least through my college career, hopefully for a few more years after that.
Cool. Well, Jake, the way we end every episode of the Moonlight Graham Show is with the 5 big questions. And the first question is, who was your role model growing up?
Yeah, so obviously really big Minnesota Twins fan.
Ooh, I like this.
I watched. I mean, I'm telling you, me and my dad probably watched every game. It was a daily thing growing up. So my first sport that I really loved was baseball. And obviously the Twins had some good teams, in the early 2000s and throughout. But so Joe Mauer is a pretty normal answer for a Twins fan. It was somebody that I looked up to. And another guy I look up to even today and just kind of awes me is LeBron James. Just because of how much of an impact he's kind of made off the court and stuff like that. I think that's pretty special when athletes use their platforms to better the world and stuff like that. That's not only inspiring on the court, but inspiring off the court. So those are 2 guys that I've always looked up to and still look up to today, I guess.
LeBron over MJ, I take it?
I am a LeBron over MJ guy. I have a lot of facts to back that up, in my opinion. I would just say the biggest thing I could say on that debate is Michael Jordan did go and play baseball, and the Bulls were very, very good without him that year. They didn't win it all by any means, but LeBron has left a lot of teams that are in the lottery the next year. So I think the impact on winning directly does give the nod to LeBron.
All right. Well, as a 2-sport guy, I think you can appreciate the pure athleticism it takes to go from not playing baseball for 15 years to stepping into AA, hitting over 200, hitting a home run, and stealing 30 bases. There's not many people ever in the world that could do that, Jake.
That's the most impressive thing I've ever seen. That's incredible to me that he went. I mean, how many people interviewed and said he would have eventually made it in the big leagues? Just his work. I don't think his work ethic is comparable, and I don't think his mindset as a champion is comparable. But as we're talking about just like being good at basketball and like the direct impact of like winning and improving teams, I do have to give it to LeBron. And I'm a youngster, so that's like a youngster answer. That's like such a 20-year-old kid's answer, but it is what it is.
I do like how you basically admit that you're wrong by saying it's a youngster answer. So I do appreciate that. I do appreciate that, Jake. Hey, the other thing.
That is not the thing. That was not what I was saying, but okay.
In your Twitter profile, you do admit that you're a LeBron guy, and you also have that you're going to be the president of the United States. So is that an actual thing that you'd like to get into politics when you're older?
Politics is something that absolutely interests me. And what I've found out in the recent years is you don't have to be a politician your whole life to eventually become the president, which is really cool to me because I don't want to be a guy who does one thing his whole life. I do. Politics is something that I'm very interested in, and whether I end up, I'm going to fundraising. I don't have the money, a campaign or anything at this point in my life, but if the opportunity presents itself, I'm definitely interested in running for president. I do think I could do a very good job. There's some. I don't think there's a lot of people who are huge fans right now of American politics. So, the average Joe might be the guy to vote for someday.
Yeah, take your time. Take your time and don't get into politics right away. I think it'll lead you down a dark path. But maybe 20, 30 years down the road, it may be good for you.
That's the plan right now. So that might work out well.
Cool. Well, I'm only at my second question now, but second question, you've set so many records in high school. Which one was most important to you, or which one are you most proud of?
The accomplishment I'm most proud of is winning the state basketball title my senior year. That's not necessarily a record, but it goes in the record book, so I'm going to count it. That team had a lot of, when it's high school sports, it's the kids you grow up with. You spent way more than just those 4 years with those guys. And so that was probably, that's the one that kind of sticks out. As for an individual one, I think winning Mr. Basketball will always be the one that kind of makes me boast my chest out a little bit and feel pretty cool about myself, just because that only goes to usually one guy, two guys in the year that I co-Mr. Basketball, I guess. That's just something that you put your name on a list with some guys who have really done some pretty cool things on the basketball court, and it kind of makes you take a step back and say, wow, I'm in the same conversation as these guys. It's pretty special.
Is there a game or a shot that still nags at you, still keeps you up at night?
Oh, yeah. Junior year, state title game, Grandview Christian. We lose by 3 points. I end up fouling out right before the end of the game. It was we really thought we were going to win it that year. That was supposed to be our year. And obviously we did win it the next year, so it kind of makes up for some of it. But there's guys on that team the year before that weren't on the team the next year, and just not getting it done for some of those guys was something that hurt me then. It'll dig at me for, I think, forever. I mean, it's just, as an athlete, there's just certain games that are always going to nag at you, and that's one that still nags at me, always will nag at me.
What's your athletic goal? So we talked about, maybe being president to get someday, which is a pretty lofty goal. But as far as your athletic career, what's the end goal here?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't try to think too far ahead. I try to make more short-term goals, and if you make more short-term goals, those long-term stuff is really going to take care of itself. And the path that sometimes you don't choose the path kind of carves itself. So right now, my goal is I want to win a conference title in basketball. I want to be a first-team all-conference basketball player in the NSIC, and then I want to switch over to baseball, and I want to be a first-team all-conference player in baseball too. And I want to do it this coming year. Whether that's realistic or not, I really don't know. But I'm definitely putting in the work and putting in the time and using all my resources to hopefully make that a reality. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I want to be a super high-level Division II athlete in both sports. That's my goal right now.
If you had the choice, or you had to pick one, I'm going to give you three options here, Jake. You're either at the free throw line, down one with 2 shots to win the conference championship, or you're closing out a game to win the conference championship, or you're at the plate with a runner on second and 2 outs. Which spot do you want?
On the mound. Yep, on the mound to close it out. I think that being on the mound, you have that total control. I know in all those situations you're kind of in total control, but on the free throw line, you hit 2 free throws and then they hit a game winner, or, and the baseball, you hit it hard and they try to add somebody. When you're on the mound, it just feels like you have so much more control of everything. And also, I picked the sport of baseball winning in like a thrilling moment over basketball in a thrilling moment, because baseball, it just never feels over. It's just always lingering until you finally get that last out. And it's just that joy, that rush of excitement that you get when you win a tough baseball game and a close baseball game is pretty uncomparable to anything else I feel in sports.
And you get a dog pile in baseball.
And you get a dog pile. And I've never been in a dog pile because we never would dog pile when we qualified for state. We'd only dog pile if we'd always plan, no, we're going to win it, and we never got it done. So I've never been a part of that dog pile, and I want to be a part of a dog pile really, really bad.
I love that. I've only been in one dog pile. When we qualified for the Junior College World Series when I was at Iowa Central, we got in a dog pile. And it's like when you're in it, you don't really know what to do. But you've seen everybody else do it like 10,000 times. And you're like, you're sprinting out there. And you're like, wait a minute, do I just jump on everybody? Because there's cleats. Right. There's a lot of danger involved.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't seem like a smart idea. And the fact that the dog pile has lived on as long as it does shows that it must be more fun than the average person realizes, because, it is dangerous. It's awkward at times. Like, you see the guys who don't know what they're supposed to do. I've seen some bad dog piles in my day, and I've seen some really good ones. And the fine line between it is very thin.
Yeah. Final question here, Jake. What's the best advice you've ever received?
I would just say, and this is just something that, like my parents have just always kind of taught me, is just make sure you're always giving thanks back to others. Nobody's made it to where they are by themselves. There's always people along the way that are stepping stones to help you get to where you want to go and be. And I don't think people realize enough how many other people it takes, for example, for me to get to where I've been, how many people have helped me along the way. And if I had to make a list of thank yous, the list would just go on and on. So the biggest thing I can just say is always give thanks back to others, and appreciate the people who have helped you get to where you are, because you wouldn't be there without them.
I like that, man. I like that. And, well, best of luck as you wrap up the Northwoods League season here. I know how much fun that league is. And be sure to tell Dan Corbin hi for me. And then as you move into this conference or this college season, hopefully there's a basketball and a baseball season this next calendar year in store for you at Upper Iowa, and we'll be cheering for you, Jake.
Yeah, I hope so too. I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on.
Hey guys, thanks once again to listening to today's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show. And even though I do most of the interviews here on the podcast, there is a ton of work that happens behind the scenes that you guys don't see that make each episode possible. So I got to give a shout out to the Moonlight Graham Show team. First of all, Brian Sandvig, our producer. Brian does all of the post-production work, and in real life, he's not just a podcast producer, he's also a real estate agent. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home down in the Kansas or Missouri areas, give Brian Sandvig a call. Next guy on that list is Brendan Gargano. Brendan does all of our design and artwork here on the podcast. He's one of the most talented artists I've ever met, and I love all of his work. If you need any help on the design side with logos or anything like that, give Brendan Gargano a call. The next guy on that list is Andy Flattery, my older brother. Andy, of course, has done some of the interviews here on the podcast. He also is a certified financial planner. He owns a business called Simple Wealth Planning. If you need any help in that area, check Andy Flattery out. And then, of course, the trusty co-host Tom Griffin and my younger brother Neil Flattery. Those guys are just busy being husbands, being fathers, they're family men, but also they do a ton of work here on the show. So thanks again for listening. We really appreciate you guys subscribing and supporting the Moonlight Graham Show.